Hello, Bob Hall here, the Hallsome Farm. Today we are going to make a video on how we harvest our worm castings. I've had many requests since we introduced the wicking bed worm farm and on how we harvest our castings, so we're going to show you how to do that today. So if you take a look at our worm bed here, you see I use old egg cartons and things for covering, and I'll show you a little bit how we feed too. Also, I have videos on how we make a worm smoothie. I'll put up in the notes if you want to watch that video. And I also have a video on how to make a wicking bed worm farm, and I'll put that up on the notes too if you want to watch that. So here's our bed, and typically we blend most of the kitchen scraps that we use and we pour it in here. I find that reduces the amount of ants and things that sometimes get into the bed, and because ants aren't good for worms. Now, there's a common theory that if you feed one side of your bed, all the worms will go to that side and leave this side empty, and so that you can harvest. So I tried that, and I never seem to have success with that. Worms are everywhere in the bed. So I don't know how people do that. I know there's other ways where people will take a bunch of castings and they'll sit it on a table in the light and kind of spread it out, and the worms will gather into the center, and then they'll scrape off, and that just seems like an awful lot of work and maybe a little bit hard on the worms. So what I did is I took some scrap wood, some 2x4s, and I went and bought me some 1/8 square screen. They call this hardware cloth. Or some people I've heard call it welded wire. Welded wire is usually a little bigger. This is hardware cloth, 1/8 inch in size, and so this is a screen to get your worm castings. Worm castings will fit through there, and I wanted it this size too. You can probably do 1/4. You'll get bigger chunks, but you also may get worms going through, and I didn't want I want to try to keep as many worms in the worm bed as possible, although I don't mind having worms in the garden. So having worms is not a hard or a bad thing to do. So I've got a plastic tool. I always try to use plastic, and my grandson's going to want to help me here. But what we normally do, and if you look down in here, you see if we scratch up, you see, I don't know if you can tell, but see there's worms. Okay, so Gavin, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to grab them like this with our hands. We're going to put it right here in the middle. You grab a scoop. Here, stand right here. Just grab a scoop real gently. There we go. All right. Now, we're just gonna, I dropped my microphone. I've had so many complaints. I was using my phone to film, and now I bought a camera with a microphone, so hopefully people can hear better. Now we just come and shake it around. Yeah, there's worms. Don't. Let's put that there. Try to be careful. See the worms popping up, and so my ultimate idea is to get a roller. Okay, now see, I've got bigger chunks here. Now, because it's a wicking bed, you notice how moist this is. So some of this may be castings, but if it's still clumped together, that's okay. So what I'm going to do, excuse me for a minute, Gavin. I'm going to take this protective cover, just sit it down here for the moment. You see all those worms there. They love this stuff. And then I'll take this, all the chunks and the worms, and dump it down there. Now I see some of the smaller worms are trying to go through the screen. So bigger ones can't fit through. Alright. They're trying to dig down.
Oh!
There we go. Okay. You want to load us up again?
Sure.
There we go. How about some more? Okay, let me do a scoop. All right. Pick some of this up. There you go. Okay, look out. There, we didn't get as many worms this time. So, I guess the idea is to try to be as quick as possible about it. There you go. He keeps going the wrong way. There you go. Now you got him. All right. Now, if you can see in here, that's our worm castings that we're getting.
There are only a few worms in there, in fact.
Yep, there's a few worms, which is okay, because we'll go put them in the garden, and they'll do great in the garden.
Yeah, they will.
So, anyway, I'm not going to bore you with doing the whole bed this way. But the idea is to, and also, I made this about 2 foot by 2 foot. I think I could make it smaller by like a foot by a foot. But if you notice, I could go down and dig most of this out. And the further down we get, the more it looks like cleaner castings. So we'll go down and we'll clean this up. But then when we go to feed, in fact, just so I can do the video, I'm gonna scrape some of this over.
Let me scrape it.
Okay, scrape this over here.
Like this?
Yeah, so make a big hole right here. Love it when the kids get involved.
Is it the first time?
The first time what? You got involved?
Yeah.
No, you've been in other videos. Can I see it? So the further down we go, the more moist it is, because it's a wicking bed. And the moisture wicks up. And you see lots of worms. So what we're going to do in this case, we just had a whole bunch of kitchen scraps. You want to dump them in that hole? We're going to Scrape it all out. Very good. All right, so we got that. And then if you look at my worm smoothie video, hold on, let me get this off first. Okay, pour that right on those vegetables. Perfect. All right, now let's push all this back over. Oh, careful, not so hard. No, here, we can use our hands too.
No. We need a little bit that way they know there's food over there.
Oh, they'll find it. Because they live in the dirt. They live in the ground, so they'll find it. But that's a good observation. You want them to find their food. Okay. So, typically we'd have that big pile over here of stuff that hadn't composted down yet. And then this would be down. We put all of our scraps and food in here, and then we'd move everything over. Now we're gonna cover everything back up, put the papers back down. Here's some more. You can do those. Old egg cartons, all this is good, and they'll eat it all up. There. Now, the reason we do this is because there's no better fertilizer for a garden, and I have a wicking bed garden, and I've had other videos that I show that, and we use different medias to grow things, but the best thing we can do is put worm castings in there. Worm castings last about 6 months, and they're the best fertilizer you can possibly put in a garden. Much better than synthetics. And there's nothing, a worm casting, I've mentioned before, but a worm casting is what comes out of the south end of a northbound worm. And it's already broken down, yeah, be quiet. It's already broken down to the most basic elements, so when the root of a plant gets around that casting, it can immediately absorb all of the nutrients. And then once it's absorbed all the nutrients, that casting is sterile. And what we call that sterile casting, after the nutrients are gone, we call that dirt. So worms make dirt, but their castings are extremely fertile and very easy for plants to digest. So that's why we want to use worm castings. Very easy to grow. Wicking bed is a great way to do it. And now you see how you can harvest. Probably having used this, I think I'm going to make like a 1x1 screen. Be a little easier. This is a little bit bulky to work with. I think if I just make it a little bit smaller, it might be easier to shift and hold. But I like the way it came out. We're going to go put this in the garden, and I hope that answers a bunch of questions. Here on the channel, the whole idea, you can see I'm sitting on a 5-gallon bucket, and I'm trying to save my back because my back can't do heavy garden work anymore. And so we're trying to do things. You gonna help my back? we try to do things on this channel to make it easier to garden. And whether you're young and strong and healthy, these techniques are still good, and they're simple.
Like me.
Like you, that's right. And if you're old and not so healthy like me, yeah, then these techniques are keep you in the garden, which is what we want to do. So that's kind of what we wanted to show you today. And remember, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly first. Thank you for watching.